The integration facility on Nexus Station hummed with the usual cacophony of 100 species trying to coexist. Arya Voss stood in the rec hall, arms crossed, watching the galaxy's most fearsome predator species play what could only be described as an elaborate game of chase. The Vakari cubs tumbled over each other with surprising grace for creatures that would one day grow into apex hunters capable of tracking prey across entire star systems. She'd been assigned to the Youth Cultural Exchange Program 3 months ago, much to the horror of the Galactic Council's Education Committee. Humans, they'd argued, were too unpredictable, too dangerous. The fact that humanity had only joined the galactic community 2 years prior didn't help their case. But Arya had credentials, patience, and most importantly, she'd grown up with 5 younger siblings. How different could alien children be? Very different, as it turned out. But not in the ways anyone expected. Observer Voss, came the clicking voice of Instructor Zelith, a mantis-like Threshin who served as the facility's primary educator. The Vakari cubs have requested a private session with you in Training Room 7. They were quite insistent. Arya raised an eyebrow. The Vakari were massive felines, all rippling muscle and retractable claws the size of combat knives. Their species had dominated their home system for millennia before achieving spaceflight, and they wore their predator status like a badge of honor. The cubs, while smaller, were still formidable and old enough to hunt independently on their homeworld. Did they say why? Arya asked. Zelitha's compound eyes glittered with what might have been amusement. They wished to demonstrate something they've been practicing. A cultural exchange, they called it. The walk to Training Room 7 took only a few minutes, but Arya's mind raced with possibilities. The Vakari cubs had been standoffish since her arrival, treating her with the kind of wary respect prey species showed predators. Which was ironic, considering humans were considered mid-tier at best in the galactic hierarchy. Sure, humans had persistence and tool use, but they lacked the raw physical prowess of true apex species. The door hissed open. The room was dimmed, shadows pooling in corners. 6 pairs of luminescent eyes watched her from the darkness, positioned strategically around the chamber. Arya recognized the setup immediately. An ambush formation. She stepped inside, letting the door close behind her. Her heart rate didn't spike. Years of dealing with her brother's pranks had given her an almost supernatural sense for when someone was trying to get a rise out of her. "Hello, cubs," she said calmly, walking toward the center of the room. A growl rumbled from her left. Deep, resonant, designed to trigger primal fear in prey species. Arya had heard the Vakari used it during ritual hunts, a sound that could paralyze smaller creatures with terror. In the confined space, it was genuinely impressive. She kept walking. Movement flickered in her peripheral vision. One of the cubs, Hero, the ringleader of this little pack, dropped from an overhead beam with claws extended, releasing a shrieking roar that would have sent most species scrambling for the exit. Arya Voss laughed. Not a nervous titter or a forced chuckle, but a full, genuine belly laugh that echoed through the training room. She doubled over slightly, hands on her knees, shoulders shaking with mirth. The effect was instantaneous. Hero landed awkwardly, his perfect predator's pounce turning into an ungainly stumble. His ear tufts flattened against his skull, and his tail puffed to twice its normal size. The other cubs emerged from their hiding spots, eyes wide, their carefully orchestrated ambush completely forgotten. That was adorable, Arya wheezed, straightening up and wiping tears from her eyes. Did you practice that? The timing was actually really good. Hero's fur stood on end. You laughed, he managed, his translator chip struggling with his distressed chittering. Prey species don't laugh. They run. They freeze. They show fear. Oh, honey, Arya said, her smile wide and warm. Humans aren't prey. The statement hung in the air like a challenge. One of the smaller cubs, brave or foolish, spoke up. But you have no claws, no fangs, no armor. You're soft. Arya's expression shifted, and for the first time, the cubs saw something that made their predator instincts scream warnings they didn't fully understand. Her smile remained, but it no longer reached her eyes. Those eyes, with their forward-facing predator's gaze, locked onto each cub in turn with an intensity that made them want to look away. "We don't need claws," she said softly. "We ran our prey to exhaustion across continents. We threw rocks hard enough to crack skulls from 100 meters away. We learned to make fire and used it to reshape our entire planet. We turned wolves into pets and made them love us for it. She took a step forward, and despite themselves, the cubs took a step back. We climbed to the top of our food chain with nothing but our brains, our endurance, and our absolute refusal to quit. And you know what the really scary part is? The cubs said nothing, transfixed. We did all of that before we even discovered agriculture. Everything humans have accomplished since then, that's just us getting creative. The room was silent except for the facility's ventilation system. Arya's demeanor shifted again, snapping back to the friendly instructor they'd been trying to frighten. But more importantly, I grew up with 5 younger siblings who tried to jump scare me approximately 17,000 times. You're going to need to bring your A game if you want to rattle a human, especially one who survived family road trips. Hero's tail was still puffed, but something like respect flickered in his eyes. Your laughter, he said slowly. It's a dominance display? Like bearing fangs. Sometimes, Arya admitted. But sometimes it's just because something is funny. Like watching a bunch of cubs try to hunt a persistence predator who's literally been waiting for you to make a move for the past 3 minutes. I could hear you breathing in the vents, Hero. The cub's ears flattened in embarrassment. Arya grinned again, this time with genuine warmth. Tell you what, though? That was a pretty solid ambush formation. Work on your noise discipline, and maybe don't telegraph your pounce quite so much, and you might actually startle me next time. Want me to show you how humans do jump scares? Six tails began to wag tentatively. Fear was transforming into fascination, and Arya recognized the shift. These weren't cubs trying to assert dominance anymore. They were children who'd just discovered that the weird new teacher was actually kind of cool. Yes, Hero said, his dignity somewhat restored. Teach us. As Arya began explaining the psychological principles behind effective surprise tactics, complete with examples from human horror films, she couldn't help but feel a small surge of pride. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy was still being written, and if she could teach the next generation of apex predators that humans were friends, not prey, then maybe the future would be a little brighter for everyone. Even if it meant turning these cubs into the most terrifying pranksters the galaxy had ever seen.